Welcome back, and let's certainly hope that that board can seek some funding to get their operations back on track and save many farmers a pretty penny. It's time now for AM Talk, and today our guests who are with us are both members of Parliament. Let's say good morning and a welcome to Mohammed Abdulaziz. He's the Member of Parliament for Mio. He's here with Mr. Anthony Ifa, who is a Member of Parliament for Isukuma Odobing Brakwa. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time. Good morning to you.
Thank you, Tian. Good morning.
Indeed. Yesterday was not without drama in Parliament, as the approval was given for the contract with Zipline to go ahead for the medical drones project. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but before this I want us to touch briefly on Galamsey. And as part of the fight against Galamsey, this administration initiated a ban on small-scale mining. This ban has been in place for over a year, and we now hear that the policy to govern small-scale mining has been, is ready to be implemented, and so we'll be hearing the details of it shortly. I want to take your thoughts very briefly on it before we get an update on how the committee that was tasked with putting together this policy have been going around some installations in the Ashanti region. We'll get an update from Erastus in a moment. But first, quick thoughts on the ban on small-scale mining and hopefully how it will all shape out once the policy is in place. Mr. Abdulaziz?
Good morning to you, and good morning to my senior brother and colleague, and good morning to our viewers. It's an interesting development that at the end of the day, we are virtually going to get a policy that will regulate the issue of Galamsey, and Galamsey in our local parlance refers to the illegal mining, the small-scale mining.
The illegal ones. Yeah.
Yes, and so it is refreshing that as a country, we are virtually going to have a framework within which these small-scale miners would operate, because the law will require a small-scale mining company, just like the international giants, to have a license and be regulated because of its impact on our national economy and also on the ecosystem of this country. You know, the issue of the small-scale mining and what they do has been in the front burner for a very long time. We are looking at the fact that they adapt very, if you like, immoral ways of mining. You know, the threats to our water bodies, the threat to the vegetation cover in this country. And even recently, Ghana Water Company was in the news for complaining that they now require a lot of resources to be able to treat some of the water that they need to treat for consumption. And so it has a lot of implications. In as much as we will need some revenue from the mining sector, it needs to be done in a manner that will not compromise the quality of life in this country. Largely, the small-scale mining is operated by indigents. Of course, there are also that worrying development trend of some foreign nationals, especially from China, you know, coming in with some technology and some equipment that allows them to do a small-scale mining, almost in a fashion that looks like the giant mining companies, and that is worrying. The other worrying thing is that we don't even have a proper account of how much we get from those small mining companies, because they are unregulated. You don't know the quantum of gold or any other mineral that they would mine in a day, how they sell that to whoever, and how the state benefits from that. So it is purely a one-man interest thing, and yet compromises the environment for all of us. And so it is refreshing, and we would support government on that note. It was fair and proper that they had to place some ban on the small-scale mining. The small-scale miners have been complaining. They have been complaining of a threat to their livelihood.
Yeah.
You know, they have been out of job, and some have argued for some alternative source of livelihood for them. And I don't know what the policy would recommend. What would be the recommendations of the policy, and how the policy would want to regulate that sector. But one thing that is clear is that yes, we will need to mine for our economy, but we will need to do that in a responsible manner. The only worrying thing is that we must take away the politics in this thing, because the water that we drink, if it is polluted, would not know whether you are an NDC person or an MPP person. And so we must approach this matter in a nationalistic manner. The national interest must be supreme. We must protect our water bodies. We must protect the vegetation cover in this country. And there was a story of some individuals who were supposed to be protecting our environment, who were cited for the wrong thing in respect of Galamsey. I remember some investigations comments to validate or deny those allegations that were made against those individuals. We want to see if that investigations has been concluded, and what are the content of the report. Because to the extent that people in political class, people who are supposed to lead the charge in protecting our natural environment, are cited for the wrongdoings, it is only proper that we do the investigations and then make the report available to the public. I have not mentioned names because I don't want to be seen politicizing that matter, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and we might be able to get an update on that later.
Exactly.
But you know, you make an important point when you refer to the livelihoods that these small-scale miners have been complaining that they're losing. And I'd love your take on this as well. But let me hear from both of you. The ban was implemented after it became public, and I actually recall it happened on a show I was hosting, that we revealed that every small-scale miner in Ghana at the time the ban was put in place was actually doing it illegally, regardless of what licenses they had. Because in order for their license to be validated, they should have sought approval from Parliament. That's what the law says. But that had never happened, not for one single small-scale miner.
That is a very interesting angle to the entire story. Not just the small-scale miners. How many mining agreements have been ratified by Parliament, even including some of the giant mining companies in this country? Remember when the issue of Exxon Kibi came, and government was citing the lack of parliamentary approval for it. You know, the question that arose at that time was that was it the duty of Exxon Kibi to send the agreement to Parliament? The obvious answer is no. So that is a failure on the part of government institutions. That is one. How many mining companies? How many mining companies or agreements have been sent to Parliament for ratification? So there is a failure on the part of governmental institutions, even to enforce the law.
And this has been historic, by the way, through successive governments.
Exactly.
What's the reason?
And when you also talk about
why has that not happened?
And when you also talk about the source of livelihood, you know, some civil society advocates advocated that we should find some other means of livelihood for the illegal miners, and because that was the only thing that they engaged in for their survival. And I wasn't for it, because when you are engaged in an action that is criminal, to get you out of it does not mean that we should find you an alternative job.
But if the action that they are engaged in has been criminalized through the omission of the state, not through their fault. They have sought all the licenses required for them to do the
There's
job.
no evidence
and the
that
state hasn't carried out.
There's no evidence that they have made enough efforts, if any, to secure those licenses. There's no evidence to that effect.
You gave the Exxon Cubic example. You said it's not their responsibility to bring it to Parliament.
Exactly. So I agree with you. But you see, for instance, if someone was engaged in armed robbery, we all agree it's a criminal act. You don't pamper him, because there are people who are unemployed, who have no any meaningful source of livelihood, and yet don't take to armed robbery. A crime is a crime and must be dealt with as such. But we need as a country, to create opportunities for young people to engage their energies for national development and for their own personal survival. That is something we cannot compromise on. But I'm saying that once we agree that what they engage in compromises our safety and that it is criminal, we must tell them to stop. Anyone who fails to stop must be dealt with. And that's why government came with the operation, was it a Vanguard? It had to do...
Vanguard, yes. Where police and
military were deployed. I thought that was the best approach. But the stories that also followed that one was not very palatable, where some security personnel were cited for some complicity, taking monies and allowing them to engage in those illegal activities. And so it is a very complex thing, but we will need a framework that would regulate their operations. And that's why I think that the policy comes in handy.
It's a good time. Mr. Efa, I mean, I wonder if you put yourself in the shoes of these small-scale miners, and let's delineate those who were doing it illegally, as in, with no license, no, permission, nothing, to those who felt that they had gone through the right process to become small-scale miners legally. Let's draw the distinction there. And I want you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who felt they had done the right thing, got all the permits and had been mining for years, and then all of a sudden there's a ban on small-scale mining. So for over a year, they can't do their legitimate job. But then it also turns out that their license for all those years was not even valid because it was never ratified by Parliament. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you not feel you deserve some compensation from government?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo. And I think my brother Abdulaziz has spoken to the subject the way I also have said. And it is very, very encouraging to know that government, at the end of the day, is bringing out a framework to regulate the activities of the miners. Kojo, your specific question about if I were a regular legal miner, small scale, and this ban had been imposed on me, ordinarily I don't feel comfortable with that. But then as a nation, we see that the environment was destroyed. There was a lot of degradation. The water that we needed for survival was severely polluted. The fish had all died. You couldn't have fishing as a livelihood anymore. So while mining and the small-scale mining, especially for those who are doing it properly, were contributing to the national economy, feeding themselves and giving money to all of us, the impact of their activities generally, because some people had destroyed the environment, it was important to say, let us hold on, let us look at it and come back to work. I'm happy that this policy, we don't have the details, but the understanding is that there are some specific guidelines, licensing guidelines, even operational guidelines. There are training facilities and retraining for these people who go into the mining sector. And I think if the document is launched, the policy is launched, and I understand by Friday it will be launched, we will all get to know the details of it. But all those who have lost a livelihood, a source of livelihood, it was not intentional. When things were right, nobody asked them to stop work. If you even look at the corollary in the banking sector, banking has done so well over the last 20 or 30 years. But recently, there has been this uproar about banks not being able to meet customers when they come for their deposits. It became necessary for somebody, a regulator, to come in and say that, look, let us step back and see what we can do to improve the entire system. The whole essence is to make sure that customers do not lose their money. And anytime I talk about this, I do not refer essentially to the deposits that you and I have in accounts, but I look at the businesses that also have monies in their accounts, and are likely to go down if these banks were to go down. So there would be some interventions needed at any point in time, irrespective of the industry that we play in, and especially for a primary activity such as mining, which polluted our sources of water, and I understand even the chemicals that they use started affecting the quality of the farm produce that we had. Cocoa farms were being destroyed, the cassava had all the cyanides and everything that was bad about us. So they may have lost the opportunity to survive on that particular activity. But you see, as human beings, we have the survival instinct. Whether government finds alternative jobs for us or not, they certainly must feed themselves. They certainly will find a way. So I'm sure they have survived maybe more difficult, in a more difficult way. The policy would wait to see what it takes. And once the policy has been announced, I would pray that the people who play in that industry would follow the guidelines. I'm sure they were engaged to the point, to some extent, before the final documentation is coming out. So they may have made some input, relevant inputs, things that they can implement. I'm sure if we should all support this policy that is coming up, we should have a better way of doing our mining, and also ensuring that the reclamation elements, I'm aware there's going to be some responsibility on the miners, whether they are big or small, to make attempts at reclaiming some of the land so that we don't lose it all because of one economic activity. If we follow through with the recommendations or the policy as it comes, I'm sure we're going to have a better system of small-scale mining. We're going to get a better regulated sector of the mining industry, and the business people there will be happy. They'll have their businesses back. Maybe this time having better returns for the little effort that they'll put into it.
Now, in a moment, I'll take your thoughts, Mr. Abdulaziz, but I'm told that we're able to connect now to Erastus Asare-Donko, who is our correspondent in Kumasi. And of course, Erastus has been spending some time with the committee that has been tasked with putting together the new small-scale mining policy. And Erastus, good morning. It's good to see you. And of course, you've been making the rounds, haven't you, with the committee? Tell us what you've learned.
Well, exactly. I have been spending some time inter-ministerial task force on illegal mining. It's been interesting the findings that we are getting. There are questions arising out of work with them. The questions emanate from you will go to forest reserve areas and you find out that there are large-scale mining. I wouldn't call it small-scale mining. Large-scale mining, to the extent of you have forest destroyed in a manner spanning about football fields combined.
Wow.
Within the forest. And we have 15 of such sites scattered across the Kro and the Apamprama forest reserves. Remember, this is the same area that the Forestry Commissioner, Sir John, went around and took media people to the ground and said, well, he was not mining, they were doing reclamation. But we found out about 20 excavators deep within the forest digging for gold, because we got some gold concentrates, we got other items which indicated that they were not doing reclamation in that part of the forest, they were doing mining. And then you ask yourself, Operation Vanguard has its headquarters in the region, some 20 kilometers from where this is happening. And you ask yourself, they heard of it, they did not hear of it, whether they went there or they didn't. We are gathering people within the town that Operation Vanguard came there on about 3 occasions these items. Just as they were going, they returned with the items, back to the miners, apologized, and so they started. If this is true, why is it that Christian Vanguard is being bullied by some big forces, big shots in government? Why is it that the interministerial committee has the power to be able to defeat whoever is in the bush and tell them in the face that all you're doing is illegal, you're seizing your equipment and able to seize the equipment and send them to Accra? These are nagging questions to be answered.
Wow. And what did the task force have to say about this?
In fact, I asked the question, but the explanation I got was that initially the job was to do monitoring and evaluation. And so they will stay back, Operation Vanguard will go, and they will bring them reports of what's happening within the areas. And then they will tell them, see so and so equipment. They will mobilize low loaders and other things, go in there and retrieve the item. But then they realized that each point that they came, they started telling them stories that the information wasn't right, or they did not find any mine within the area, and it conflicted with the intelligence that they were getting. So at a point, they had to come back to Accra, request that they will turn into a task force, go in there themselves and check it out. And then that is where we started this operation. And Ojo, what we found in there is trouble. You find a whole forest reserve abused this way. Hundreds of trees, rare tree species cut down, covered with sand and mud, deep gullies and pits covered in water. And the pollution, the level of pollution within this virgin forest is overwhelming. So,
tell me,
yeah,
were you able to identify the individuals behind this? Was the task force able to identify any of those who are sponsoring or overseeing or even allowing this to happen?
Well, Kojo, at one point in time, we went to the forest, deep in the forest. There was a mining enclave there. In fact, it was so equipped. And we saw that's where we picked the gold concentrate, about 5 boxes from. Now, the head of security there, an ex-serviceman, ex-W Adokwating, he confronted us, told us that they were not working alone. He was bold to tell us that they have the backing of powerful people in government, and so we should wait for them to make calls. And that's where the commander said, okay, I'm not allowing you to make any calls. They seized all their phones. It was later we realized that they told us it belonged to one Donald Ntua. And he claimed he had documents, he had permits to mine within the forest reserve. And so we were curious, we sought for the document, and this is what we got. The document is a prospecting license signed by Asomatre, who is the Minister for Land. They also gave us some photocopies of payments made in the sum of 150,000 Ghana cedis paid by Heritage Imperial Company Limited, which belongs to Donald, at the Forestry Commission. And all these document prospecting licenses are signed by Donald Ntua, who is the CEO of Heritage Mining. It's signed by Asomatre, the Minister for Lands. There's another witness, Mesut Salis, who is Director and Secretary for the Lands. Oath of proof signed by the Registrar of Lands, and it has the stamp of the High Court.
So to clarify, what you have there are documents that indicates that here in this forest reserve, in spite of the fact that there is a ban on small-scale mining, the government of Ghana, through institutions like the ministry and the Forestry Commission, have given a private entity legal permission to prospect in these forest reserves, even though there is a ban on small-scale mining.
Yes, and that is what baffles us. And Kojo, when you go to the ground, all manner of people call you. In fact, the moment you enter the Galamsey site and you try to see the equipment, that is where all manner of calls from very prominent people within government. Some of them, for the sake of confidentiality, which is the nature of our job, I can't disclose their names, but they keep calling from government circles, from the seat of government, from the party itself. They keep calling and they tell you, move away from the site. I know this person. He's a relative of mine. And so it brings to understand why Operation Vanguard failed in certain sections, because they were bullied by people in higher places. But this interministerial task force is working directly from the Flagstaff House. And so they do not want to tolerate any cause from anybody. And that is why they are making it.
This is revealing and disturbing in equal measure. And Erastus, thank you so much for bringing us this update. We'll obviously stay in touch and keep on top of this matter. But I think you've brought a story that highlights the need for us to name, shame, and wherever possible, jail those who are contributing to the pollution of our natural resources for their personal gain. Thank you. Thank you, Erastus. Wow. This is what we are doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
I wonder how you react to this. But you wanted to say something earlier, Mr. Abdulaziz. So I'll come to you first and then get a reaction from Mr. Ifa afterwards, if that's okay.
Even before I comment on your documentary, I'd wanted to state that the policy that we are developing must be responsive to all angles of the issue, not just the issue of sustaining the jobs and also the environment, and for that matter, our water bodies.
Yeah.
It must also make the produce from these small-scale miners feed into our national accounting. How much, what quantum of gold do they mine in a day? There must be a system to track that from all the small-scale miners. We must be able to tell how much gold they mined, how they sell it, what taxes they pay, so that it informs national accounting. That is proper. And so I just wanted to bring that angle, that it should be responsive to all the angles.
Right.
But the revelations from Erastus, right, confirms what I was telling you, that there are people who are supposed to be protecting our environment who are deeply engaged in illegal mining. In fact, it came as a rumor. I remember the ranking member on Mines and Energy, Honorable Mutawakilu, raised that matter and specifically mentioned Sir John and Chairman Wuntumi, the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the NPP. Sir John came out to deny that publicly. If you listen to your man on the field, the very site that Sir John says that they are doing reclamation, there is deep and serious illegal mining going on there. If you are the chairman of the Forestry Commission and you tell us that at point ABCD we are doing reclamation, CEO, it has emerged that what is happening there is serious illegal mining. It only goes to, in a way, confirm the allegations that were made by the ranking member on Mines and Energy. And so this fight, if we would succeed, will require a political will. That people in government, he has mentioned the seat of presidency, people in government who are supposed to champion. See, this thing is not about NDC MPP. In this country, as soon as you begin to play the NDC MPP football game, then you lost the core issues will be lost on you. And so I am saying that we must insist that political leaders in this country must show a political will. You know, he's talking about the seat of government. You and I know where the seat of government is. And so if you have the regional chairman of the ruling party. You have the former general secretary of the NPP now, the chief executive officer of the Forestry Commission, all cited for the wrongdoings. Investigations commenced, and even as we speak today, we don't have the report. And these are the revelations from your reporter. Only God can save us.
I mean, I want to, sorry, before Mr. Ifa comes in, I want to ask for the benefit of your experience, belonging to a party that was in government. Why is it so difficult to regulate and, in fact, to ensure that your own party members, if wrongdoing is to be, if people are to poison, water bodies, that it wouldn't be your own people that are at the forefront of it, because this is historic. This is not the first time that a government official has been involved. It's happened in successive governments. So why is it so hard?
I can only be speculative on this issue because I have personally not been in government. So I can only be speculative. I can only conjecture what I think the problem is. But to be very specific and very certain, I'm afraid. It all boils down to the issue of corruption. It all boils down to the issue of political party financing. And we must open up the discussion on these issues.
We are back there.
For instance, not to like I said, the report is not yet out, but you know the weight of Chairman Wontumi within the dynamics, within the scheme of affairs in NPP. You know the way that he wields. And so for such a person who will tell you, and let me tell you, when the issue of the BOST, the contaminated fuel came, we all listened to a sitting member of parliament on the ticket of the NPP say that he was not going to allow the man to be sacked because he knows how much he financed the NPP. So most of these things boils down to political party financing and corruption.
Let me bring in Mr. Ifa at this point. I mean, this is embarrassing. You know, without even naming individuals. Those documents prove that even though the president has issued a ban on the activity, state institutions are issuing licenses for the activity to go on. Prospecting, the thing is banned. So what are they going to prospect in a forest reserve?
It's good you said no names, and because it goes beyond those individuals engaged in it. And for me, people should be punished for these things. If deliberately we are destroying our forests, our land, our farmlands, we are destroying the water that we have to drink to survive, and you say you are MPP or you are NDC, it's neither here nor there.
It's murder.
Yes, it's criminal. and I don't know why we will be slow at punishing, especially the big fishes, when we get to know them. When you punish one big fish, all the smaller fishes will go to sleep. But when the big fish thinks that my government is in power, and so I'm beyond the law, then that's what will happen. The smaller ones will also do it at night. The report isn't out, and so we cannot conclude to say that these two, maybe they're even bigger people that we do not know yet. When the Fulani herdsmen issues came, we thought it's just the herdsmen, but then we later got to know that there were very influential Ghanaians involved. Let the report come out, but I would say that whatever recommendations, as long as it's established that this is really what is happening, government shouldn't hesitate to punish people. It doesn't matter if they sponsored your party or not. If you can save lives and you can get people to do it properly, and then you are out of government. Governments have said, presidents have said that they will, at the risk of them winning elections, they will condemn an action or they will not take certain actions. And they've gone ahead to do that. So
and sometimes they've lost the election.
Yeah, that doesn't matter if 2 lives, if 1 life or 2 is saved because you've lost an election, because you have another opportunity, another 4 years or 8 years or 12 years, as the case may be. So we should really be serious with this, because when the program started, the ban started, we saw some improved quality in our water. And water company announced that now they use smaller quantities of that detergents or chemicals to purify the water for us.
They were able to reopen some of the purifying stations that they had to shut down before because the water was just not in a
And do we know how much savings were made in terms of foreign currency? If we're importing all this and we're using twice, 3 times, 5 times the quantity required to treat maybe a certain quantity of water. So it goes beyond personal gain and political party sponsorship. But let us be ethical about some of these things. Let us see the poor people who would rely on the government for water, for example. The poor people whose cocoa farm is just less than maybe an acre. And that's all the grandparents have survived on, and they are surviving on today. The outputs are getting smaller and smaller. So really, that political determination to end it, we should all support it and get it out.
I'm happy to hear you both agree on this. It's like you said, it's a life and death. It's a national issue. I'm glad we are not playing politics with it. Okay, let's spend the rest of our time on this drone matter. I wonder if you'll agree on this as well. But just yesterday, Parliament passed gave the approval for the contract to go ahead for this drone service, medical supplies, to go ahead. But the Ghana Medical Association put out a statement, I believe, just yesterday, and they've asked government to immediately suspend the planned implementation. I want to read from a story in the Finder newspaper, which cites this statement signed by the president, Dr. Frank Ankobia. Now, it explained that, look, they are not against the use of technology in improving healthcare in the country, but they expect that any such intervention must be aimed at complementing existing efforts and not as the single most important activity to solve the country's health problems. They say that, look, every intervention proposed should not be seen as the one panacea, but just as part of a strategy to, augment the existing efforts. But look, what they are saying is that it is more important, or perhaps more of a priority, to improve referral systems, especially emergency situations, which to all intents and purposes are more beneficial. And then you can look at some of these augmenting policies. But if you have, what, 12 million? Is that the value of the contract? If you have $12 million or whatever it's going to cost, instead of spending it on drones, are there not other more immediate life-saving things that the money can be spent on? For me, I want to start with you, Mr. Ifa, and this time around, let's start from this issue of consultation. That's what the Ghana Medical Association is calling for, which indicates immediately that they were not consulted. I can also tell you on authority that I sought to contact someone at the National Blood Service to get some input into this conversation. Just yesterday, no, the day before yesterday. And I was told by this individual, who I'll not name, that his bosses were in a meeting at the Ghana Health Service being briefed on this drone policy the day before it was to be approved in Parliament. The Ghana Blood Service. Why would government seek to put out such a policy without consulting from the very beginning some of the most important stakeholders?
All right, thank you, Kujo. I have information that way back in April 2018, during the annual Health Week celebration, the Vice President spoke about this drone factor in complementing. It's not replacing, of course, the drones cannot replace what human beings can do. But he introduced the subject matter, and the feedback was that it looked interesting to do.
Right. Feedback from who?
The Ghana Medical Association, I'm saying at their own annual conference in April 2018. That's the report I have.
Okay.
Again, recently in November, in Kofodia, they had a similar engagement. Even though there was so much talk about ambulances, this same matter was discussed again. All right. And there was that opportunity to say no, or to say that we want more engagement. Now, it's been passed, but then as Ghanaians, who's going to implement them? Obviously, it's not Abdulaziz and myself, because we can't handle the drone, we can't handle the blood and the emergency medicines. It's the same medical association that's going to do it. The Director of Health Services has said to us that this is a good thing and it's the way to go. Because, you see, it's not going to be the normal supply of medical inputs like blood, like medicines. What you're saying is that these are targeted emergency situations. Emergency situations. And we have had cases where if we had some prompt attention for some medical conditions, some lives would have been saved. And so if we have this to complement what we already are doing, I don't think it's a bad idea. The issue of engagement, I think, should continue because they are going to implement it. Government makes the policy, ultimately, and they look for the partnerships. But it is the people, the medical officers, who are going to do the implementation. And it's important that once they've raised this concern, they go back to the engagements. And I'm sure we'll have a smooth implementation. The GMA is not against, like you read, they are not against the introduction of technology in service delivery. What they are saying is that let us understand the issues better than what you have done with us. And I'm sure government is open to this discussion and debate. Ultimately, if we can save even a life, I'm not sure about the $12 million. But even if we were to save a life at $12 million, just one life, because we're able to promptly supply needed emergency medication, we should be proud as Ghanaians.
What is the figure? I mean, this thing was, I'm sure it came through the finance committee, did it not?
And this one came, it's more the health.
It's still an agreement,
because,
is it not?
Yeah, because there is no purchase of drones.
Right.
If there was the purchase of drones, it will come to the finance committee to look at the terms and conditions.
So what is the figure? I mean, it was discussed yesterday, wasn't it?
I think there's a scale. There's scale of charges that I cannot readily give. But then my understanding is that if they did less than 15 deliveries, there won't be any charge because then it's too minute to place a charge. And that if you did between 15 and about 50 deliveries, they have about $11,000 or so, subject to confirmation of all the number. But there is a reduced rate for that level. Beyond 50 to as many deliveries as possible within a month or a year, then the scaling could go as much as the 80,000 or 88,000 that's been quoted. Now, in the beginning, let's all remember that the thinking was that we're going to buy drones. And this simple discussion indicates that it never came to the finance committee. Otherwise, it will come there if it was to buy. So it is a service agreement which would obviously involve the setting up of 4 centers. And my understanding is that the first center will be Suhum, and other centers which would have a maximum distance of about 80 to the nearest facility, a medical facility. So within 10 minutes to 40 minutes, the supplies will be delivered. And for me, that element of emergency, we have situations where suddenly there's a big accident on the road somewhere, and the victims have to be transported to the nearest facility. Then it becomes an emergency. They may have some already on their hands, but because of the unexpected happening suddenly and the number of people involved, it may become necessary to fly 1 or 2 medications to them.
But forgive me, I mean,
the whole essence of it.
Forgive me. You see, you've made an important point there. So this emergency situation you've exemplified here. So there's a car accident, you take the person to the hospital. We know that historically there's a problem with the availability of blood. But is it the drone that will solve the problem when there isn't blood? So we are paying for these drones, but what blood?
Yes, I think that argument about availability of those emergency medications is a very important argument. The availability of blood is also very important. Now, there is also this counter argument that some of the medical facilities stock more of the medication than they need at any point in time. And so where it is, and it's all computerized, and my understanding is that you can sit in one office and know the stock levels in the various, and so you place an order from here, and then that hospital that has the excess will be able to release, and then the drones will fly it So the drones will not make the orders. It's the pharmacists, the medical officers who sit and have this on their hand. These emergencies. So they rather would apply for, and then immediately it goes to the hospital, the facility with the excess supply, and then this is loaded onto the drones, and they fly within 10 to 14
Will
minutes.
there be a need for some sort of central administration unit that will determine things like priority? You know, if there's a limited supply of some particular medical equipment or blood, and it's needed in 2 or 3 different places at the same time, who is going to make that decision centrally about where it goes?
Is the receiving facility.
But if there are 3 receiving facilities,
yes,
only one item available.
Yeah, that is why, you see, the whole agreement we need to study, because
it's not it.
Yes, yes. I'm not saying I should. You see, what I'm saying is that let us go into the details of it. We have about 145 or so. All these numbers are subject to checks anyway. But I'm aware that there are some some emergency items that will be in stock at all times in the 4 centers. At all times.
Okay.
So they have minimum stock levels that are maintained, and this would be flown out quickly as possible. So it is the real strength here that emergency situations and also to complement existing arrangements.
Okay. I want to give the rest of our time to Mr. Abdulaziz. And look, I've seen how the minority has reacted to this thing. You must at least grant to your critics who suggest that, look, this is just an opportunity you are taking to do politics with something which, if done well, can only save lives.
We will not, as a minority, sabotage government project that is targeted at improving the lives of Ghanaians. We will not. We are a responsible minority group. We would play our critical role of oversight and to proffer alternative solutions that I can assure you we will do. And in doing that, we would want to count on civil society groups. We would want to count on you, the media, the clergy, and the decent minds in this country. On the issue of the drones and the delivery of what they call essential medical supplies and blood, we are not against any move to introduce technology into the health sector. We are not against it. But we have raised 2 critical issues as far as this drone issue is concerned. The first and the most important has to do with the priority and how it fits into the plan of the Ghana Health Service. The second issue has to do with the cost and the cost implications. Look, these drones that they are talking about is not part of the Ghana Health Service medium to long-term plan. No, it is not a baby of the Ministry of Health. It is the baby and the handwork of the Vice President. That is a fact. That the whole process is cooked from his office. And it is worrying that the Vice President, and for that matter, his office, is not speaking to these issues. And they have allowed civil and public servants to engage us. That is worrying.
Why?
It is worrying because
the civil and public servants who will implement it.
I agree with you, but I've just told you that the whole concept, if you remember, my brother just indicated that somewhere in April, in fact, to be specific, 24th of April, the Vice President made that announcement to the Ghana Medical Association. Right? The Ministry of Health, it has not featured in their budget in anything of the Ministry of Health. And so it is the baby of the office of the Vice President. It is intriguing that he's not speaking to it. And they're allowing, we are not talking about even the implementation, the concept. And so we want to engage the Vice President himself in his office on that matter. Look, we live in a country where most communities don't have health centers. Women would have to be carried on motorbikes and bicycles for long distances, pregnant women, just to get access to medical attention. We are in a country where most of the available health centers that we have in our rural areas don't have doctors and nurses. My constituency is a typical example. My constituency is also a district that we don't have a district hospital. We don't have a single medical officer in the entire district. We have very few nurses. The roads are bad. We have no referral systems. We have no ambulances. And all that government is thinking of today is to get drones to deliver essential medicals and blood. The question that arises is our regional medical stores. What do they have in them? They are virtually empty.
I would have loved to engage your ideas a bit more, but I'm being signaled vigorously that our time is up. This is a conversation that can only have begun. We'll have to continue in subsequent encounters. But for now, thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed Abdulaziz, Member of Parliament for Myong, and of course, Mr. Tony Efa, whose constituency always escapes me, but it's Sukuma Odobing Brakwa, isn't it? Yes, he's also an APSU, by the way. Very fine gentleman. It's great to have had you both on the show. There's even more coming up on the AM show. Don't go anywhere. We're back after these.